Turn one soul ring.
Did you get it, Eric?
I did.
Okay, good. Because
Everything is working.
You didn't say got it, so I was worried.
Oh, my bad.
Eric doesn't always. It's always Riley who's like, got it.
Well, it's because Riley has that hillbilly internet, so
No.
we got to make sure. No, he does. He
Oh.
does. Like if we're recording during the day, it's really bad when everybody else is on the internet, and sometimes if it's too early in the evening, like if we record at like 6 or 7 o'clock, we have to do a phone call because too many people are using the internet, and there's not enough internet to get out to wherever the hell he lives.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you should probably just do it at like 2 a.m. or something instead.
Ideally, but he needs to sleep.
Oh,
You know?
Riley, so needy.
He's very needy.
Oh, what a needy guy.
He does.
Needy.
Yeah, he does seem very needy.
What?
No, we love you, Riley. We're
Yeah,
kidding.
you're the best. You're the best of all of us.
Certainly a limited, he is. Yes.
Stay golden. Talking about limited. Yo, I've been having a lot of fun with Amonkhet Remastered on Magic Arena.
Mm. Are all those cards available in Historic now?
They are as well.
Okay.
And yeah, the draft's pretty fun because it's not like you're getting the 2 sets, so there's definitely a bigger card pool, and then also those invocations are in there, so it's a pretty fun draft, I think. Just there's more out there and stuff, so
you can play like Mind Twist in Historic, like a playset of Mind Twist, because that was one of the invocations, right?
it was. I don't think all of them are in there.
Okay, that makes sense.
But then also like there's some cards that they're just injecting in. So cards, for example, what was it? Collected Company.
Oh, cool. That's fantastic.
They were just like, hey, we want to put this in Historic, so it's part of Amonkhet Remastered.
Yeah, pretty soon nobody's going to be playing Legacy or Modern. It's just going to be all historic. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of interesting because having an Eternal format like digital and not having to like buy stuff like MTGO obviously and stuff, and that app is really old, but you don't like run out of like in Magic Arena you can't like run out of a card, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah,
all the cards still have that same worth and stuff, and so when you're playing an older format, like it's kind of fine.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of a CCG as opposed to a TCG. But the only thing that Arena has to do now is deal with their dog shit economy.
That's not going to change.
Probably not.
No, it's stuck where it is.
They'll just keep looking at Blizzard and being like, you know what, they've got it covered. We don't want to be too much like them.
No, you don't want to be banning people for talking about political stuff. So,
all right, well, let's start the show, guys. Welcome to Turn One Soul Ring. I'm Kevin.
Hey, I'm Eric.
And we have our editor and guest host, Ainsley, joining us today.
Hello, I'm Ainsley.
And today on the show, we're starting part 4 of our Planeswalker lore series. So this isn't going to be quite the final part, but in this installment, we're going to be explaining a little bit about Urza and Xantha arriving on Serra's plane and kind of go from there. But Eric, before we get to that, how can listeners get in touch with us?
So people can find us over on Instagram at Turn One Soul Ring the podcast. Message us over on Gmail, Turn One Soul Ring the podcast at gmail.com. And then we are on YouTube, Turn One Soul Ring the podcast.
And we are doing an Instagram giveaway right now, but it's only going until this upcoming Thursday. So, go check that out. Enter in. You can see my face if you don't know what I look like. Let's get to the lore, because that's what people came here for.
That's why I'm here.
I didn't mean for that to rhyme either. But
look at you lyricist, lyricnist. I don't know.
You don't know.
So on our last installment of this series, we covered Urza's first incursion into Phyrexia and the following decades of Xantha and Urza on the run from Phyrexian pursuit. And that pursuit eventually brought them to Serra's realm. So we're just going to start off by explaining a little bit about Serra and her artificial plane. Serra was a human planeswalker from the ancient days of the multiverse with an affinity for angels. Serra Angel, iconic card.
Iconic.
She was apparently born on an undisclosed plane which is kind of a plot hole. They seem to put that in there when they just like haven't gone into that part of the story, but that's fine. She was powerful enough to create her own plane, obviously, which she populated with angels that she created. And it's sort of like angels are her children, essentially, but she didn't really birth them. She just kind of like created them out of nothing. Sort of, she's really like a godlike figure in a lot of ways.
But for angels.
Exactly, yeah. And they don't really explain exactly how that works, but, it works. And she also brought some of her most fervent human worshippers from various planes to her realm. So they weren't born there. She didn't create them. She just brought them there.
Yeah, I mean, those are the ones you want. If you're picking which worshippers, you want the fervent ones.
The most. Yeah, absolutely.
The most. Yeah. I do have to say it's cool us going through this lore now and then just seeing like, hey, we're talking about Urza a lot. They were in Modern Horizons. Now we're getting on to Serra, and they made a Serra Planeswalker in Modern Horizons. So,
yeah, now we need now that they did Urza as a creature, we need an Urza Planeswalker card, and
we really do
make it good.
That's something I think that's something we've talked about before, and I might have mentioned it on episodes I've been on. But the whole idea of like what comes first, the cards or the lore.
Yeah, and it's a
mystery.
Who knows? Chicken and the egg.
It
right?
really is.
Yeah.
Because that whole creative process too, because obviously they commission artists to make art for the sets, so there's a very early design phase where they must have the story and like what they want the cards to do and stuff kind of like be somewhat in the same kind of category,
Oh yeah. No, you can see in the art of the cards that it is influenced by the content directly. It's not just like show us your rendering of an angel. Like it's very much steeped in the story.
Yeah, so they definitely do have that, like the lore is somewhere on the makings of the card as well, so that the art can kind of show.
Yeah, not so much anymore though. They've really gotten away from that, and that's what a lot of content creators have been talking about lately. How there isn't really a strong lore or backstory for the sets that have been coming out in the last few years, and like we're talking about sets that came out, when I started playing Magic in the late 90s, and it was just a very different time. Like they were still releasing novels for sets. I would prefer that they went back to doing that kind of thing, but I don't know. I guess there's just not enough money in it. There's more money in releasing like VIP versions of booster boxes.
Well, I think like novels and books in general right now are kind of a tough sell. Like it's not a quick bang for your buck, right? It's something you kind of have to commit to. I just don't think it's as happening as other forms of art consumption or content consumption. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of it. But also, you think about like, a TV show you like or a book series that you like. It always seems like in the beginning, it's more thoughtful and it's, maybe made with a little bit more love. So, I could see that just after how many years of doing this, it's kind of like 20
years ago,
right?
What
like
we're talking about.
I'm sure it's not the same writers. It's not the exact same creative team. It's not the exact same process. It's different. And I'm sure now they have like board members being like,
Hasbro
churn it out, man. Yeah. Right? So
it's the board members aren't going to care about the story either. They obviously just care about
money.
The money.
Yeah.
100%.
Which is fine. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Because we have this wonderful lore, and we've just tapped it now. Like we could be covering this stuff for years. I have a lot of books to read. But anyways, like all artificial planes, including Phyrexia, Serra's realm could only maintain its integrity for so long before it collapsed. This eventuality was just one reason that Yawgmoth wanted to spread Phyrexia across the multiverse, was because it would eventually collapse. Serra spent most of her time in her palace or her sanctum, depicted on the reserve list card Serra's Sanctum. Good card, check it out.
Good card.
When Urza and Xantha arrived on Serra's plane, Xantha was left to convalesce on her own. Serra, sensing the Planeswalker spark within Urza, took her to her sanctum. And I don't know if this is something specific to planeswalkers that they can sense other planeswalker sparks, but I think Serra is a little special when it comes to planeswalkers.
Well, it seems like she's one of the originals, kind of like what Urza is, right? So, and it seems that not like any planeswalker can just create their own friggin' plane. Like that's
yeah, exactly. It does. It's something special for sure. So Serra took Urza and put him into her cocoon, which was a device of her own making that could restore most living creatures to full health and well-being, as long as they had a white, as long as they were white mana aligned. And Xantha couldn't be put in the cocoon without killing her because she was completely black mana aligned. And I don't have a picture of the cocoon. I couldn't find it.
I bet it's cozy.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's just like, it's probably like the cocoons in the hit film Cocoon. Just like it's like a cocoon just like made of white light.
I think you're playing it fast and loose with the term hit film.
You don't like Cocoon?
Never even heard of it.
Oh, yeah, well, I've never heard of it.
Okay, well, I don't think you guys watched as many movies as I did when I was a kid.
It's truth.
But anyways, this isn't a podcast about the hit film Cocoon. It's a podcast about magic.
I bet there's one out there.
Probably just about that one movie.
Yes.
100 episodes.
Dissecting it.
It's 1985.
Wow.
Yeah. Good effects, honestly.
All right.
So the time that Urza spent in Serra's cocoon also restored his aged and fractured mind, as well as breaking the mental connection to Yawgmoth that had been made during Urza's initial attack on Phyrexia. This mental connection to Yawgmoth had played a big role in Urza's deteriorating mental state over the last few centuries, as well as giving Yawgmoth the ability to track Urza through the multiverse. And we said in the last episode that Urza also left a trail for the Phyrexians, but, he was doing that without knowing that they could have just tracked him anyway. So, what he was doing was altruistic, but...
Was it that, or did they just kind of, like, forget about some things and write this in?
No, it's all...
No?
It's all part of it. They're just... because they're just slowly, like, making Urza less of a piece of shit character throughout throughout the story.
He will have redemption.
That's the idea. I hope so. I'm not at the end yet.
No spoilers.
This is pretty interesting, though, talking about the mental connection with Yawgmoth and everything, and this actually doing something about it. It's kind of like breaking Urza free of what's going on there.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, though, for Serra's realm, it was the last place that Yawgmoth had tracked Urza, and we'll explain those events in a little bit, like the Phyrexians getting to Serra's realm, but just know that we won't find out the ultimate fate of Serra's plane until we cover the events depicted in the novel Time Streams, which will be the sort of next series that we do in this vein. Anyways, Xantha and Urza were reunited shortly after they were both healed, but Urza no longer trusted Xantha to be his companion. And this may have been an effect of the pure white mana essence of Serra's cocoon, kind of making him a little less trustworthy of Xantha. But in any case, Urza seemed more cautious of her and her Phyrexianness than he had even been at the time that he had rescued her over 2,000 years ago.
Does it say how Xantha was healed, or does it just say she was healed?
She just healed in the normal way. She just kind of laid in bed and was taken care of by
lots of self-care.
Other Serrans,
cool.
Serra angels.
Did some face masks and
Serrans.
Serrans, but also newts, like Phyrexian newts, do heal at an accelerated rate. So she also had that going for her too. So Urza doesn't trust Xantha at this point, but he did promise Xantha that Serra would take her to a safe plane and leave her there to live out the rest of her unnaturally long life. And Xantha, not willing to leave Urza or their shared desire for revenge against Phyrexia, proceeded to use a knife to cut her heart from the hiding place in her leg. That was the heart stone that she had hidden in her leg shortly after she and Urza had left Phyrexia decades earlier. And this next part, this is just what Xantha says to Urza about this.
My heart, she said, offering him the blood-stained amber. If you think I'm untrustworthy, if you think I belong to the ineffable, crush it and I'll die. I swore I'd never betray you. I'd rather die than live knowing that you've abandoned me. Take it. If I am what you say I am, I don't want to live. But if you won't kill me, then take me with you.
And with that gesture, Urza was convinced of Xantha's dedication to their shared cause and decided to keep her as his companion. And he kept the heart as well.
Oh.
But yeah, she didn't just like jam it back into her leg. He, put it somewhere in his utility belt or wherever.
Do you think he rinsed it first?
I don't. I bet with his powers, he probably just touched it and just like made it clean.
Oh, that's handy.
I imagine that's probably what happened. So they spent a few more years in Serra's realm or on Serra's realm. And in that time, Urza learned how Serra created her plane, which they don't explain. They just say that he learned how she did it. And he also deduced that Phyrexia must also be an artificially created plane. And we talked about that a little bit last episode, where if a naturally occurring plane is going to have all forms of mana on it, so all the Wooburg mana, and it's a good sign that a plane is artificial if it only has one type of mana. So the example of Serra's plane, it's white mana, and the example of Phyrexia, it's black mana. But Urza thought that if Phyrexia was created by someone, then whoever created it must have come from another plane. And so his new plan was to find the plane the Phyrexians originated in an attempt to learn about their past and perhaps find a weakness or weaknesses inherent to them. But unfortunately, we know from our earlier episodes that Yawgmoth was a former member of Thran Society that came from Dominaria and was taken to Phyrexia by the Planeswalker Dyfed. And therefore, any weaknesses inherent to Yawgmoth would be the same ones inherent to Urza and any other Dominarian. And all that being said, after thousands of years of experimentation, mutation, and improvements on the Dominarians that Yawgmoth had originally taken to Phyrexia, they were much harder to kill than regular humans. Gix being a great example of this. He was one of the original Thran humans that was taken to Phyrexia by Yawgmoth. So he's very old. Was
he fervent?
He was very fervent. He might have been the most fervent, actually.
Oh, good.
But, not knowing any of this, Urza and Xantha traveled throughout the multiverse for about another 1,000 years before finally making their way to a plane called Equilor. Urza claimed that this plane was located at the end of time. I don't know what that means. And that he was... I'm just reporting what's in the book, everybody. And he was relatively certain that it was the plane where he would find the answers to the origins of Phyrexia and its creator, and probably find some other answers as well. I mean,
maybe like a little pot of gold or something.
It's at the end of time.
Oh, it's not the rainbow, it's time.
Oh, my bad.
So, like we mentioned earlier, the Phyrexians were able to follow Urza and Xantha to Serra's realm, although they arrived shortly after Urza and Xantha had left the plane on their way to Equilor. Which was like, they were there for quite a few years, but regardless.
Still after.
The Serrans were able to fight off the Phyrexians during their initial invasion, but the plane had been infected by black mana. And I think that's another thing that you don't want with an artificial plane that's sort of powered by one type of mana. If you get different mana in there, it just kind of ruins it. It's like if you have vanilla ice cream and you get chocolate in there and then it just turns to chocolate, which is a really great example for this.
That's actually a perfect
white
example.
And black, but
because you can add vanilla to chocolate and it's not really a thing, but if you add chocolate to vanilla, it's now chocolate.
And that's also a great point, because I don't know that if you added white mana to Phyrexia that anything bad would happen, because Urza was white mana aligned and he went into Phyrexia and they're still doing fine.
Yeah, but I think like being infected by something though is like something happened when the Phyrexians went there.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of like Urza didn't try and do anything. So.
Yeah, and Phyrexia is kind of an infection. Like glistening oil is sort of like a sickness from a certain point of view. But anyways, this the Phyrexians traveling to Serra's realm, it made the pure white mana powered plane begin to break down at an accelerated rate. So like we said, these artificial planes, they're going to eventually collapse and break down, but this invasion just accelerated the process quite a bit. And as a result of this, Serra proposed a mass exodus from the plane, and then she just took off. She just left.
Whoa.
And after she left, her head archangel, Radiant, took control of the plane with increasing militancy and religious paranoia. And while Radiant was trying to expunge all Phyrexian influence from the realm, she unwittingly became a tool of Phyrexia and started exterminating loyal Serrans. So, sort of
crap.
She was way too fervent.
Yeah, she went. Yes. There's a lot of fervent characters in this story. They should have called it Fervent, not Planeswalker. But yeah, it's sort of in an attempt to get rid of potential Phyrexians acting as Serrans, in disguises or newts or whatever they were. Radiant just started wiping out whole swaths of the population. But things kind of went on like that for a while. Radiant was a puppet of Phyrexia, and different Phyrexians started to become more involved in the hierarchy of Serran society, and we can probably assume that probably happened to most planes that Urza and Xantha visited while they were on the run. But don't worry about it, because Urza finally starts to make up for his mistakes in the next book that we'll cover in this series.
Also, really cool. I didn't even know this existed, but there is a card, Radiant Archangel.
Oh yeah, legendary creature.
Legendary 3/3 for 5 mana.
Great. Talk about power creep, huh?
Right. There's also a Radiance Judgment.
And what does that do?
For 2 and a white, you can destroy target creature with power 4 or greater at instant speed. But also, it has cycling for 2. So that's not so bad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Good set. So when when Xantha and Urza arrived on Equilor, they found a society of long-lived humans. The elders of Equilorian society were mysterious spirits that lived in mountain caves. Their society was centered around deep thought, meditation, and even in some cases the ability to see the future. Not exactly the predetermined future, but things that had not yet come to pass, but could if certain events were to transpire.
Kind of like Doctor Strange.
Right, all those different timelines, or like the thing that Frodo looks into in the Fellowship of the Ring. But anyways, this ability of seeing into the future was something that was reserved for the elders of Equilorian society. The elders told to Urza that they knew of Phyrexia. They also told Urza that Phyrexia could not reach Dominaria and the other planes sealed within the Shard of the 12 Worlds, which is something that we covered in part 1 of this series. But basically, it was an impenetrable shield created when Urza activated the Golgothian Silex that contained Dominaria and 11 other planes. So a Planeswalker couldn't travel to those planes or from them. But anyways, the elders cautioned Urza that the multiverse was full of dark forces like Phyrexia, and that they would all fall eventually. So that's great. I mean, that doesn't help anybody right now, but that's, like long term, everybody bad is gonna fall, I guess is what they say.
That's what you want.
Yeah, that's...
Well, it's just as it's full of dark forces like Phyrexia. So I think every plane is gonna fall to dark forces.
Oh,
is that what you're saying?
No. It's just like everything that's like bad and evil is going to
go away,
disappear.
Bye.
Yeah. Eventually. Bye.
Eventually, but that's not really helpful right now. Because Phyrexia is still a clear and present danger. But anyways, Urza would go on to spend nearly 40 days at a time in the mountain caves with the elders over many years, and calmed by the revelations of the Equilorians, Urza decided to stay on Equilor forever. And that's the end of the series.
No,
it's not. Urza was...
Why would he only stay for 40 days at a time?
I don't know. I guess he had to come out and...
Maybe he could only fit, maybe he had a backpack and he only had enough space for 40 days worth of food.
Well, he doesn't really need to eat
Oh.
or use the bathroom or sleep. So
And he can touch things and it's just poof clean.
Well, I made that up. I don't know if that's true, but he can touch things. Like if somebody's cut or injured, he can touch it and they're healed. So I assume that he could touch something and make it
You
clean.
touch a bloody stone and
He'll heal it.
Swiffer it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but anyways,
He seems cool.
He's got some problems though.
Oh,
He's so powerful. He has the power of Swiffer.
Yeah.
That's right. The power of Swiffer Duster and a touch. It's like King Midas, but it's like
Oh my god!
Everything he touches turns to clean.
To clean. That's right.
So Urza was amazed by the knowledge of the Equilorians, and he was also astonished that they had left this knowledge almost unused. He quickly devised many ways to employ it, the knowledge, and wished to change Equilor into a mechanical paradise. But his intrusive plans weren't received well by the majority of the elders, which isn't surprising at all. And this sounds really like Yawgmothy or Phyrexian to me, because that's what they'll talk about a lot in Phyrexia. They'll refer to it as a type of paradise and making everything mechanical. That's their whole thing. It's all machines. So it's just kind of an interesting thing that I noticed. I don't know if there's anything there. But fortunately for Equilor, Urza soon had to leave because the shard of the 12 worlds had been destroyed, which again left Dominaria unprotected from Phyrexia. The shard was broken by Freyalise, the Planeswalker. She cast the world spell on Dominaria, ending the Ice Age. And once the elders told Urza this, he planeswalked away to prepare Dominaria for a Phyrexian invasion, never to return. And it took him about 100 years to planeswalk back to Dominaria. And I don't know why it takes so long to planeswalk to a place that you've been before, but that's what the book says.
Also, that was a lot of information in the past, couple sentences.
Yeah.
So apparently the shard's been destroyed because Freyalise cast the world spell, which, there was an Ice Age on Dominaria.
Yeah, and that was the Ice Age that Urza caused by using the Golgothian Silex at the end of the Brothers' War. But you can actually, listeners, if you want to find out more about the Ice Age, the novel, I believe it's called The Growing Dark or The Gathering Dark. I don't know. The Gathering Dark might be too on the nose. But there's a book that's about the Ice Age, and I think it ends with Freyalise casting the world spell, but don't quote me on that.
I thought you were about to recommend the hit film Ice Age.
Yeah, but the original. The sequels are garbage.
Okay.
Just watch the original.
The OG.
That's right. After settling on Dominaria, Urza and Xantha lived together in a small cabin.
Aw.
Yeah, it was like a 2-room cabin.
Cute.
In obscurity for about 200 years before they began to lay the groundwork for the defense of Dominaria.
That's a long time to live in a small cabin with one other person.
They didn't stay. It was essentially like if you think of like a cabin and you just have a wall in the middle and each of them had in half the cabin. So they didn't really live, they didn't really cohabitate. But also, they don't just stay at the cabin. They go out and do things. Well, Xantha does. Urza not so much.
Well, that's good. And because they don't eat, it's not like they have shared space. They don't have to share a kitchen or anything.
Well, she needs to eat. He doesn't.
Okay, well then she gets the side with the kitchen.
Yeah, they're both immortal, but she's...
And she probably also gets the side with the bathroom.
Yeah, she does have to pee-pee. Yeah. And we'll get to that, which is interesting because I didn't know that newts had... genitals, but we'll get to that because things do get a little bit sexy. But
in the cabin?
In the cabin, yeah, but not with Urza. Spoiler alert.
Oh, no, fun. Okay.
Yeah. He already got. He's gotten as sexy as he's ever gonna get.
All right.
He did that in the Brothers' War.
He's past his prime. Okay.
Very much so. Yeah. So during this long hibernation for the both of them, Urza became more and more obsessed with the past and his guilt over Mishra. That's his dead brother. For Xantha's part, she spent this time studying the history of Dominaria. She spent a lot of time studying the Brothers' War specifically. She did this by reading the Antiquities War, the book written over 3,000 years earlier by Urza's wife, Calebin Krug.
Did she also listen to our podcast episode about it?
She probably did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet she did.
3,000 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like Star Wars, like a long time ago in a galaxy. No, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You know, we don't know when this happened. This is like, it might as well be a different dimension.
It's so funny. We have all these names like Xantha and like Urza and Mishra, and it's like, then there's Kayla.
It's Kayla.
Like,
I'm from Krug.
it's so funny.
It's just the writers got lazy, I guess. I don't know.
Or maybe it's someone, like maybe it was the writer's wife or something.
Probably, yeah. Or her name.
Sure, but it's still, Kayla still ends in an A, so we have Urza, Xantha,
Yeah.
Kayla.
And that could be, and Mishra, you're right,
Mishra.
Serra. Yeah.
Serra.
Yeah.
They all end in A.
They do.
Yawgmoth. That's also.
Yeah, right?
So, with Urza obsessed and distracted with the past, Phyrexians began their slow invasion into Dominaria. Xantha was aware of this and tried to inform Urza, but she was unable to break his obsession with the past or the guilt he felt over his brother Mishra. So Xantha got the hot idea to find someone who could pose as Mishra, bring that person back to the cabin, and try to help Urza come back to reality. So just kind of trick him.
All right.
Xantha then traveled to the capital city of Ephron Pinkar, appropriately named Pinkar City, to look for a doppelganger of Urza's dead brother. And she found this doppelganger in the form of a slave named Retepe? Reteep?
I think it's Retepe. I think you're right. That looks right to me.
Or Rat for short, which is how we're going to be referring to him for the rest of this episode. Xantha bought Rat from the slave pens and explained to him that what she needed him to do. And being her slave, Rat didn't really have a choice in the matter, so he agreed.
Doesn't sound like
It's
the
like
worst
Stockholm
thing, though.
syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, if someone's going to buy you because you're a slave, it's like, oh, I just have to pose as somebody compared to, like, I don't know, lots of other stuff.
Getting beaten, yeah, who knows?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. I feel like it's a crapshoot, though, no matter, whenever you're involved in human trafficking, it's just bad.
I mean, yeah.
anyways.
Okay.
On their way
We're going places.
on their way out of the city, Xantha and Rat encountered two rival gangs fighting one another. Rat informed Xantha that the two factions were the Shraddha and the Red Stripes. Rat planned on joining the Red Stripes if he was ever free again, because
And if he started playing guitar.
right.
Yeah.
Because the Shraddha were religious zealots and pretty murdery. In fact, they murdered his family and sold him into slavery.
Oh, yeah, so I definitely want to be with them.
No, he
wants to join the other guys. He wants to join the Red Stripes.
He wants to join
the Shraddha.
The
My bad.
Shraddha were bad.
My bad.
Yeah.
Xantha didn't want any part of the fight between the two factions, so she quickly ferried them both out of the city. But before they left the city, she noticed, but didn't tell Rat, that she smelled Phyrexians among the Red Stripes, so probably not a good idea to join them either. Once outside the city walls, Xantha and Rat took off in Xantha's bubble on their way back to the capital city. On their way back to the cabin that Urza and Xantha shared. But on their way, Rat saw a village being pillaged by the Shraddha and got Xantha to land so he could help the villagers. So Xantha and Rat killed a few of the Shraddha and saved a few of the villagers, and all in all, the fight was a success. Rat wanted to stay to help bury the dead and to ferry some of the villagers to another nearby village. And Xantha agreed to help him if he agreed to act as Mishra to help Urza see the clear and present danger of the Phyrexians that had already infiltrated Dominarian society.
So can I make a prediction?
Please, yeah.
I think she's gonna get a little sexy with Rat. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
See what happens.
So we already said that Rat agreed based on the fact that he was Xantha's slave, but she really wanted him to do it because he wanted to do it, because she's kind of a softie.
Yeah. Oh, I smell love. Yeah.
And they came to an agreement that Rat would act as Mishra for 1 year, and then Xantha would set him free.
All right.
It's a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm.
So over the next 2 weeks, they wrapped up the aforementioned village affairs, while at the same time Xantha educated Rat in all things Urza and Mishra from what she had learned from studying the Antiquities War and from Urza himself. And also in Dominarian society, the Brothers' War is sort of a big thing that happened, thousands of years ago, but people, even at this time, know about Urza and Mishra and this conflict that started an ice age. I don't think any of these people lived through the ice age, but, well, no, because it's like 200 years, 300 years later. I don't know. Anyways, when they returned to the cottage, Urza didn't at first believe that Rat was Mishra, and they looked a lot alike though. If you look at pictures,
but yeah, like how would Xantha just find Mishra all of a sudden? You know, that's kind of
it's like a stocky guy with brown hair. They're all over the place. It's like my dad.
What?
He's a stocky guy with brown hair.
Yeah, it's true.
anyways, when Xantha, so Urza used his powers to read Rat's mind to make sure that this was his brother or that it wasn't, and in doing so, almost killed him. And after looking through his memories, Urza concluded that this man was not his dead brother. But Xantha told Urza that when the Phyrexians took Mishra during the Brothers' War, they took his memories as well. And she also told Urza that the Mishra that was killed at the end of their war was just a Phyrexian drone with Mishra's skin stretched over it. So shortly thereafter, Rat regained consciousness, and by that time, Urza had been somewhat convinced by Xantha, and then Urza took Rat aside and started to explain to him what he'd been up to for the last few thousand years. Just a couple of buds catching up. That easy.
All right.
It's really funny how nice Urza is to Rat almost right after meeting him, and how seemingly mean he is to Xantha after spending several thousand years with her.
So he's misogynist?
Yeah, but she's not even really... Well, I mean, she does identify as a female, but even, I think, like, newts are supposed to be pretty androgynous.
Gender neutral? That's fine.
Yeah, but the book really makes it seem like Urza is a little nuts after living with the kind of power he's had for so long, even though he was supposedly healed in Serra's cocoon. But this next part is taken from the novel, and it's a good example of how much Urza belittles Xantha.
Xantha. I rescued Xantha 1,000 years ago. No, longer than that. More than 3,000 years ago. Don't be fooled by appearances, as I was. She's Phyrexian, cooked up in one of their vats. A mistake. A failure. A slave. They were getting ready to bury her when I came along. Thought she was Argivian at first. She's loyal to me. She's got her own reasons for turning on Phyrexia, but her mind is limited. You can talk to her, but only a fool would listen.
Doesn't have a lot of confidence in Xantha, which is a mistake.
Mean.
Yeah.
Holy. Mean. Especially for being with her for so long. Mm-hmm. Like, these two have traveled for so long together and done so much. It's just weird that Urza would, feel this way about Xantha.
Yeah, you'd think they'd be a lot tighter.
Yeah, and, I can understand... in some way I can understand Urza, wanting to talk to Rat right away, being that it's Mishra, and it's like, oh my god, my brother who I thought I was dead is finally here. Yeah, it's crazy how he just instantly turns on Xantha that way.
Yep.
Mishra's pretty cute.
Yeah, in some pictures he's cute. As a younger man, he's cute, but I'm not a fan of the stocky.
He doesn't look stocky in this picture.
He's stocky. You can't see his legs. No, he's always described as stocky. Like, he's stocky, he's tanned, has dark hair, and Urza is tall and blonde and fair.
I was gonna say, you were the opposite of that, right? You were also tall and blonde and fair. You were the opposite of Mishra.
Yeah, but I'm just... well, I mean, if I was short and stocky, maybe I would have a different opinion, but...
No, I'm just saying, obviously, Urza's more my type as well.
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh, yeah, definitely. So after about 2 months passed of the three of them living together, Rat acting as Mishra and helping to turn Urza away from the past and away from his guilt, because, he's got nothing to be guilty of anymore, except, the war that he caused. Xantha and Rat grew closer and eventually became lovers. So you were right.
That's right.
You were right. Again, like I said earlier, I didn't know whether or not newts had genitals up to this part in the novel, so they really are, for all intents and purposes, humans. But I don't think they can procreate. I don't think I think Rat can go in there riding bareback. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
So
did they go into like detail about it? Like, was it like a?
No, this is like a young adult book. They don't. Well, I think it's even younger than that. I think this is probably a book for like 12-year-olds or something.
Oh, okay, so they like kissed and like went under the covers, turned the lights off.
Yeah, that's what it says. That's what it says. They loved.
They loved.
Yeah.
They done loved.
So near the tail end of that 2-month period, in one of Urza and Rat's hangouts, I don't really know what else to call them, Rat told Urza all about Pinkar City. He told Urza all about the Shradda and the Red Stripes and how the city was engulfed in the gang's struggle. Rat also told Urza that Xantha suspected that there were Phyrexians on both sides of the conflict. And a day or two after that conversation, Urza disappeared, just wasn't at the cabin. So Xantha seemingly had finally gotten what she wanted. She had lifted Urza out of his obsession with the past, and after getting the story from Rat, Xantha, with Rat's help, decided to travel to Pinkar City to find and possibly help Urza. Once in the city, it didn't take long for Xantha to find the unmistakable scent of glistening oil surrounding 6 men, cloaked head to toe but otherwise unmarked. They were cloaked head to toe in black. I guess I forgot to write that. So she and Rat...
They were just cloaked.
They were invisible, yes. So Rat and Xantha followed them. The 6 men left the city shortly after they were spotted and traveled east with Xantha and Rat in Xantha's bubble following them. Xantha had to keep the bubble out of the sun so it wouldn't cast a shadow for the 6 riders to see. I guess it would have been more like just 2 people, like shadows of 2 people, because the bubble is transparent, which would have been kind of funny. Once the riders had reined in their horses at the grassy edge of an abandoned orchard, they dismounted. Xantha took the bubble in for a closer look, even though it might have given away their position. They hadn't hovered among the trees for very long when one of the men pulled something black, shiny, and disc-shaped from his saddlebag. Xantha had no doubt that the device was an ambulator. The 6 men had each grabbed onto the disc and were beginning to stretch it across the trampled grass. It wasn't the way Xantha had learned to open an ambulator, but it had been nearly 2,000 years since she had seen one, and undoubtedly the design of the devices would have changed. Luckily for Xantha and Rat, they had brought several incendiary artifact devices made by Urza called fire pots. Just basically like grenades, like fragmentation grenades, to deal with just such an occurrence. Xantha raised the bubble slightly, then backing off to the far edge of the orchard, out of sight of the 6 men, but well within the firepot's range, she brought it down carefully. So much so that the thump of their supplies hitting the ground as the bubble collapsed wasn't loud enough to disturb the birds in the nearest trees. Well, that's quiet. And, Xantha can't... The bubble has to stay with Xantha at all times because it's also her armor. So she aimed the fire pots, then let them fly. She yawned out her armor, left Rat with the supplies, drew her sword, and ran at the 6 men. The men were sword-armed but not armored, just cloaked. Xantha planned to take one, maybe 2.
In black.
In black.
Xantha planned to take 1, maybe 2 of them by surprise, and hoped that the fire pots would do the same. But mostly, she hoped that the men would abandon the ambulator before it spat out reinforcements. The first part of her plan went well. She met a man charging through the trees, struggling to draw his sword. Xantha slew him with a side cut across the gut. It was loud and messy, but successful.
Oof.
While this was...
Nice detail.
While this was happening, Rat was busy launching firepots at the men still at work, anchoring the ambulator. None of the firepots helped to disable the men, but they had spooked all 6 of the men's horses, and the horses were long gone. The portal to Phyrexia was beginning to open when one of the firepots disappeared into the rippling black disc before it exploded. Xantha had time to imagine where it might have gone or what it might accomplish when it arrived. Xantha made quick work of 3 of the men, and at that point there were only 2 men left. One was still trying to anchor the ambulator while the other was guarding him. This man put up an actual fight against Xantha, but she was able to best him after a short back-and-forth sword fight. Xantha moved to kick the kneeling man in the chin, not a killing blow except for that he fell backward into the now seething portal. 2 more exploding fire pots arrived. One was simply loud and hurtled her backward, away from the ambulator, but still the last direction she wanted to move. The other was fire that spread evenly across the surface of the portal. Xantha staggered back to the place where the last man had been kneeling, the place where she expected to find a palm-sized panel with several black jewels. The priests had apparently changed the design. There was neither panel nor jewels. In their place, Xantha saw a smooth black stone. Xantha decided that if she couldn't conceivably operate this newer type of ambulator, she would attempt to destroy it. She brought her sword down on the stone. The sword shattered, and the fire vanished from the surface of the portal as if it had been inhaled. The surface of the portal turned from black to silver, and a Phyrexian emerged from the silver portal moments later. It was a priest of some sort. There was too much metal for it to be anything less than a searcher, definitely not the scrap-made tender or teacher priest Xantha had expected, with a band of sleepers. It had a triangular head with faceted eyes, a bit like Urza's gemstone eyes, though large enough that Xantha couldn't have covered one with splayed hands, so it's kind of a big boy.
Yeah.
The priest raised a nozzle-tipped arm and exterminated a flying bird an instant after it had fully emerged, but ignored Xantha, who crouched unmoving about 3 paces from the ambulator's edge.
I mean, like, Xantha is also Phyrexian, so he probably, like, senses some living thing and kills it, but Xantha is, like, Phyrexian, so it's like, oh, that's instantly, like,
that's
maybe
fine.
an ally.
Yeah. So the nozzle arm was also new to Xantha. She thought she'd seen a thin black thread reach out to the bird, but the attack had been so quick that she couldn't be sure of anything except that the bird had disappeared in a burst of red light. Xantha stood up and beckoned to the priest with the nozzle arm. The nozzle weapon sent something very sharp, very hot at the hollow of Xantha's neck, and she felt as though it had come out through her spine. Urza's armor flashed a radiant cobalt blue, astonishing both her and the priest, so they're surprised. The priest's right arm came up and shot a segmented cable, the tip of which was a fast-spinning flower with razored petals, like not a real flower, but it's
flower design.
It struck Xantha's face. She felt bones give, but the flower took greater damage. Steel petals clattered to the ground, and pulses of glistening oil spurted from the still spinning hub. Xantha struck quickly with the broken sword, enveloping the cable, and yanked hard. It had 2 metal legs and a top-heavy torso. In the Phyrexia she remembered, bipedal priests that resembled this one had a tendency to topple. The priest nearly did topple, but Xantha had pulled it closer instead, which was worse. It lashed the severed cable of its right arm around her waist, then began using its metal arms as clubs. Xantha could neither retreat nor make good use of her sword. Her right elbow got clobbered and broken within the armor. She managed to get the sword free of the cable and transferred it to her left hand before her right went numb within the armor. Xantha took the only stroke she had and sideswiped the priest's right eye.
What a fight. Holy.
At this point, 2 more fire pots rained down around them. One of them was so concussive that it jarred something loose inside the priest, and glistening oil poured from the downward point of its triangle head. It struck one final time at Xantha, another blow to her already mangled elbow before it expired. So she got free of the cable, and she's extremely beat up at this point, but as long as she didn't release the armor, she could still use her body. Yeah. And it also kept the swelling back as well. So now they needed to deal with the ambulator because she assumed that there would be more Phyrexians coming through the portal any minute now. Yeah. So they decided to use the remaining fire pots to blow up the ambulator because she couldn't operate it and she couldn't really destroy the control panel. So that's basically what they did. She had Rat stay far back. They put the fire pots close to the portal and set them all off. And shortly after that, after the explosion, the last thing that we see Xantha doing is flying through the air after the explosion. And that's where we're going to pick back up for the 5th and final part of this series.
Wow. That was a fun fight scene.
Yeah.
At the end there.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely really interesting. Just like the priest sounds really cool.
Yeah.
He's got a triangle head.
And like a fighting flower. Like, I'm gonna get ya.
Yeah, and it seems like the Phyrexians, it's more about quantity over quality. You know, they have these cool things, but they seem relatively easy to kill. At least Xantha being a newt, who's arguably the easiest type of Phyrexian to kill, and she can best all these other creatures. All right, everybody. Well, like I said, I think this is going to be just 5 parts. I think we can wrap this up next week, but we'll have to see. But we hope you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you next week. And of course, thank you for listening. And Ainsley, thank you for co-hosting and editing the show each and every week.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You got it, buddy.
All right, everybody. We will talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Turn 1 Soul Ring.
Been spending most our lives living in mechanical paradise. Oh.